Quick few things before we get started, because I haven't done a video like this before. When I say that a movie is bad, or any number of synonyms, I don't mean it's not enjoyable. You can enjoy whatever you want, and I can't stop you. Instead, I am referring to the writing quality of the movie, taking into account things like plot holes, contrivances, character inconsistencies, and other problems of the sort. And before you say, "But that doesn't matter, it's a superhero movie," unless you enjoy watching random colors flashing on a screen, you have to draw the line at some point for what is so illogical it stops becoming enjoyable. There have been plenty of great superhero movies in the past, especially in this franchise, and the only thing stopping them from being good at this point is Marvel Studios being too lazy to hire good writers who actually care about writing a tight script and taking past continuity into account. Phase 4 has, for the most part, been a garbage fire of writing. I don't hate all of it. In fact, there are some things in it I really like, but I would not call anything that has come out of it good, with Eternals being no exception. And with that out of the way, time to discuss, perhaps, the worst Marvel movie. I was able to firmly call it the worst until a certain movie about doctors and madness came out. But even then, Eternals is definitely bottom 2. In the MCU as a whole, including TV shows, Eternals sits firmly in the bottom 4, which is no simple feat at this point. You gotta make something really bad to get down there. Simply, this movie is bad. Why, you might ask? Well, let's get started, because this is going to be a long one. Eternals opens with a text crawl, very pretentious indeed, and wait a second, stop. Pay close attention to the literal first sentence in the entire movie. In the beginning, before the 6 singularities and the dawn of creation, came the Celestials. The very first sentence of the movie is wrong. Let's listen to what the Collector and Wong have to say on this topic, shall we?
Before creation itself, there were 6 singularities.
At the dawn of the universe, there was nothing. Then, boom.
Then the universe exploded into existence,
Big bangs and 6 elemental crystals hurtling across the virgin universe.
and the remnants of these systems were forged into concentrated ingots, Infinity Stones.
These infinity stones each control an essential aspect of existence.
So, the singularities existed before creation itself, and there was still nothing before the stones that they turned into became a thing. The Celestials couldn't have possibly come first. As explained by Wong, the stones govern all the aspects that make up reality, and from what we learn from other people talking about the stones, it seems clear that things couldn't really exist without them. And if you want to say Endgame disproves that because Thanos destroys the stones, based on his wording, they technically do exist. They're just reduced to atoms. So they still exist to make up all the necessary aspects of reality, just not in a usable state. So,
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong.
other than that, the title crawl isn't too terribly important. Basically, the Deviants were bad, so the Celestials sent the Eternals to protect intelligent life from them. Although, it's quite strange that Earth was lucky enough to get the Prime Eternal Ajax, and was also the first planet ever to change their unyielding faith. But surely we'll get a good reason for that, right? We open up to the Eternals waking up for their mission on Earth, and Cersei and Icarus go to look at the planet they're traveling to.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
I'm Icarus.
Interesting response. Also, why do they have different accents and speak English when they haven't arrived on Earth and English doesn't exist yet? Calling Earth beautiful also doesn't make much sense for reasons I'll explain later, but the bigger issue here is that the Earth is very far away in this shot and not getting closer very quickly. Then it's much closer in the next shot. It shouldn't be that close yet. So we then see what's happening on Earth, and the Deviants are attacking the humans. Oh no! This guy has no sense of self-preservation, but whatever. Why are the deviants attacking one at a time instead of ganging up on the prey? Also, how has humanity survived this long without the Eternals' help? It seems like humanity is defenseless against these things, yet they survived without the Eternals until the most recent 7,000 years? I doubt it. Shouldn't it be dangerous for Makari to move people at this speed? That's a lot of acceleration. Kingo is walking up to the deviant here for a good bit before he shoots it, and it just stands there waiting for him to shoot it. Oh, Makari is deaf. I guess that makes sense, because she has super speed and either lost her hearing, or is that way to protect her hearing from the sonic booms. Which I'm sure makes sense, but we'll come back to that. Okay, so right here, a deviant is running towards Gilgamesh when Thena is right next to it. I guess somehow it didn't notice her, despite the fact that she's slower than it, so to be alongside it, she would have had to be in front of it at some point. Also, the deviant just stands here for a little bit every single time she stops to pose and pull out her weapons. I don't know what it's doing. Well, those fights are done, and they were pretty bad. Now the Eternals show up to these primitive people with a giant ship, and they just don't react. Also, this would be pretty strange if, oh, I don't know, they were instructed not to interfere with humanity or anything. Oh, one of them is a child, but the others aren't. How interesting. We'll come back to that later as well. Why are they just standing here posing? These people send a child forward to the potentially dangerous beings in front of them. Shouldn't they be sending out an adult instead, in case they turn out to be hostile? Well, Cersei gives this kid a knife, then we're done with this scene. But while that happened, Time by Pink Floyd started playing. We're then put in the present day. Get it? Time? That was probably supposed to be clever or something. Things are mostly the same as they are in real life in the present day, as we know from previous things in the MCU. Like right here, Lexus being a car brand with the same type of cars. The problem here is that Cersei created a knife that shaped human history, and plenty of other things were now different in the history of the past 7,000 years, or even farther back, because deviants existed before the Eternals got here. And yet, humanity has developed very similarly, mostly the same inventions and ideas up until the 1940s when there was a super soldier serum. This just doesn't work. You can't just insert things into history like that and have it play out the same. Captain America the First Avenger I can somewhat accept, because it wasn't that long ago, and it's not like the outcome of World War II was any different. And we do see differences in the present day that eventually cropped up because of what happened. But in Eternals, they are supposedly shaping history 7,000 years ago. That's gonna cause some butterfly effects. Also, what's the point of this alarm? Why would you have an alarm that happens after you've already left? Is it for the time she's supposed to arrive? That's the way it seems, because she arrives late. That's not how you set alarms. It will result in, big surprise, arriving late. Great job, Cersei. A bit after she actually arrives, an earthquake happens, and she notices it. But after she whispers this, it takes her a while to actually inform the class that they should get under their tables because an earthquake is happening. Great job, Cersei. Why is this kid taking shelter under this artifact? It looks so heavy. We then see a dog seeing a deviant in the water, and he doesn't bark at it or run away, which is strange. We then move on to a party scene, and Sprite is pretending to be an adult, but this guy tries to touch her hand and goes through the illusion. He reacts more calmly than he probably should, but more importantly, why was she not trying at all to make her hand seem more real in that moment by reaching with her own hand to put it right there, or at least pulling back the illusion hand when he reached for it? Anyway, this upsets her, so she leaves. Cersei and Dane are then talking about how Dane thinks she is a wizard because their water turns into coffee when the waiter is ignoring them. So I guess that means she's sticking her finger into their cups and turning the water into coffee without him or anyone else noticing. That's funny. Also, Sprite tells him things when the Eternals seem to be trying to keep themselves a secret. They are then walking back and talking about falling in love with humans when the Eternals are going to outlast them by a large amount, but we'll touch on that later. It's just sad that this is a possibility for them, but that's just life, right? Dane just kinda stands there when there's a deviant in front of him, as do Cersei and Sprite. Cersei uses her powers somewhat cleverly, but she could have made it something that would make the deviant sink lower faster, like a liquid. And what is her plan? Just to run away from it? That's not exactly protecting humanity. Whatever she turned the ground into wasn't very strong, because the deviant is able to break out quickly. So they run away, then Sprite makes a bunch of fake copies of them, which is a pretty good strategy to confuse it, except she can turn things invisible, like the ship at the start of the movie. So why not turn herself and Cersei invisible so they can get farther away? This then results in a car driving through a fake Cersei and hitting the brakes, and a car behind it runs into it. How? This seems like a pretty empty street, and they should have seen the fake Cerseis way earlier and been able to stop gradually before they run not Cersei over, because for all they know, this is a real person that they are about to hit. It seems like everyone has run away at this point, because when all the Cerseis and Sprites are walking around, there isn't anybody there. But all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people out here running away. The deviant then finds out where Sprite is somehow, and she doesn't try to mask herself or anything. Icarus then comes in and tackles the deviant, knocking it out for a bit, so he just slowly walks out of the store, not checking if he needs to beat up the deviant some more, which results in him getting tackled. Nice job. They then tumble into a bus, which is traveling at a very high speed for a narrow street at night with people standing in the middle of it, causing the bus to flip over.
That's not how force works.
It wouldn't flip from Icarus and the deviant hitting it from the front, then flying to the side immediately. Double-decker buses are not going to be that easy to flip. Icarus and the deviant are already out of the way. It's just going to keep moving forward and fall back the other way, remaining upright. Cersei then turns it into flower petals, and the bus driver is unharmed, somehow. Icarus then continues to beat the deviant up until it heals itself, and for some reason he lets it heal instead of continuing to attack it. When it's done healing, he scares it off. The cops then show up, so Sprite masks them and they head out. Typical hero behavior. We then see Cersei explaining the backstory of the Eternals to Dane. There's a dumb joke about Dane wanting to be turned into a giraffe, which brings up a really dumb, arbitrary, and difficult to define limitation to Cersei's powers.
It's too bad I can't change sentient beings.
This is such a dumb restriction, and I don't know how it would actually work. Matter in sentient beings isn't different from matter in other things, so why would this restriction exist at all? Also, where would you draw the line at sentient? Are insects sentient? Are bacteria sentient? Probably not, but are monkeys sentient? How mentally capable does an animal have to be to count? That's not something that's just definitively one way. I don't get how something having sentience would create this restriction. Dane asks why they didn't help fight Thanos or any other wars, which we'll get to later because them not fighting Thanos is even dumber for a separate reason. But Cersei explains this by saying,
We were instructed not to interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved.
but the reason we're given for this is that if they interfered in this way, then humanity would
Never have had the chance to develop in the way you were meant to.
Of all the secret societies in the MCU, the Eternals have the worst reasoning behind why we haven't seen them yet. They only interfere when deviants are involved, because otherwise humanity wouldn't develop in the way they were meant to? What does this even mean? They've already affected multiple significant parts of human history and introduced technologies to them, as we'll see later. So surely humanity hasn't developed the way they were meant to, because of this. And this is so arbitrary. Humans fighting each other is what is necessary for them to develop in the way they were meant to? Why? Sure, war leads to all kinds of new technology and teaches humanity better skills for cooperation. But surely, if you really wanted to, you could develop them in this way while still interfering in human conflicts, and even cause them to develop faster if you help enough. Need I mention humanity was almost wiped out by Ultron, and the Eternals didn't come to help? I mean, sure, the Avengers beat him, but nobody knew that would be the final outcome. Maybe the Eternals didn't hear about it in time. but they should have been on the lookout for these kinds of things after the 2012 attack happened. Dane asks why they are still here, and Cersei says they are waiting to get called home, which is questionable. I don't know why they wouldn't be allowed to leave, if their purpose is fulfilled and they weren't supposed to interfere in human conflicts. Leaving them here with nothing to do is just risking them getting bored and wanting to interfere in human conflicts. We then see a news broadcast saying there were global earthquakes, and that people are speculating it is connected to the blip, which makes very little sense. I don't know what the connection is there, unless possibly the blip happened very recently, which is a possibility, but makes something we learn later in the movie worse. The rest of this conversation just leads to them looking for Ajax, and we are then thrust into Babylon in the past, where the Eternals are fighting deviants and trying to get people inside the city while they do that. But oh no! A child trips! Icarus saves her, but Gilgamesh gets them to close the gate, so this child doesn't get inside the city. Oops! And while Gilgamesh is fighting this deviant, he gets knocked away, so Makari catches him by accelerating towards him, opposite of the direction he's moving, which would amplify the force he experienced, so this is a terrible way to catch him. She should slow him down gradually. The rest of this fight is fine. Then they line up and pose at the end.
Because that's what heroes do.
Actually it isn't, but they like to do it anyway. We then cut to Ajax meeting with Erishim through, I think, some kind of remote projection thing, but for some reason her hair is floating like she's actually there. The mechanics of this are very vague, but that doesn't really matter, because all it's used for is to be a Skype call with Erishim. Ajax says she noticed something special about this planet, which is strange considering that it's 575 BC, and humanity isn't really anything special yet. She thinks the cost may be too much this time, when for millions of years she has followed Erishim with unyielding faith. This movie is way biased towards Earth. It thinks that Earth is the greatest planet to ever exist, and humanity is the greatest species in the entire universe. Plenty of other planets are more advanced than humanity. There is absolutely no reason for them to be seen as the most special at this point. But don't worry, the Earth-centrism gets worse later in the movie, so we'll just move on at the moment. We see the ship under Babylon. How did it get there? The only way that this could make sense is if they built it over it. But does that mean to exit, they would have to break the city? That seems like a bad parking spot. Ajax goes inside to talk to some of the other Eternals, and asks Phastos if he went to the party. A party? Why are the Eternals interacting with humans if they're not supposed to interfere? I know they're specifically told not to interfere with conflicts, but I feel like interacting with humans at all is gonna have undesired effects. Phastos didn't go to the party because he was working on a steam engine. Ajax somehow doesn't know what a steam engine is, despite having millions of years of memories from different planets. So they all skip steam engines, I guess. Druig says they've only had the wheel for 1,000 years, which means the MCU got the wheel significantly later than real life, which is yet another thing to stack onto its history being different yet everything turning out the same. Also, it tells us that humanity in the MCU is less intelligent than us because they went 2,500 more years without inventing the wheel, until presumably the Eternals gave it to them. I cannot stress enough how problematic it is that this movie inserts a bunch of things into history that don't line up, and yet it plays out mostly the same as real life. Anyway, Ajax rejects Phastos' idea and asks if he has anything else to offer, so he shows the plow, which she thinks is a better idea. She says,
"Listen, humanity may be coming along slower than some of us want.
but if that's the case, why not give them more technology? That's not interfering in human conflicts, which is the only limitation we're given, even if them going to parties and stuff should have unwanted effects anyway. Sure, introducing a steam engine might freak them out like Druig said, but it's a small price to pay for salvation. I mean, quick advancement, if that's what the Eternals want." We are then shown Sprite telling stories to the people in Babylon, and by the way, Eternals dunks on humanity even more, by saying we didn't even make up some of the stories, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, on our own. Although if Sprite didn't completely make it up like she did the story of Icarus, it still wasn't completely made up like it was in real life. It was rather based on a real person, which makes it less of a feat. Thena then says something true.
I
didn't come to this planet to cower behind walls.
She's right, but Icarus still argues, saying,
We need to trust Arisham's design for this planet.
which brings into question, what exactly does Arisham want them to do? Does he want them to protect humanity from deviants as efficiently as possible and they're just messing around going to parties anyway? Or has Arisham specifically told them to do this? Again, this isn't a conflict, but it still seems like interfering quite a bit. Druig talks about some things with Makari, and this is a nitpick, but Makari starts signing what she's saying before Druig is looking at her, so he'd have no idea what the start of her sentence was. You'd think she would wait until he can see her. We then get Icarus wanting to get with Cersei, and here she turns nothing into water because the dirt doesn't go down when she does it. Interesting. And then sex! Which I will not show, just to be safe. Very awkward and thrusted into the middle of an awkward and unnatural relationship with no chemistry. I actually don't know what its purpose was here, especially because it's extremely cropped, so I don't see any reason not to leave it out. They then get married 1,000 years later. That's a pretty slow-moving relationship. When the flashback ends, we're shown Cersei, Sprite, and Icarus driving to Ajax's house, and on arrival, they realize that Ajax's dead. Oh no! Anyway, when they talk about her probably being killed by a deviant, Sprite suggests that the deviant in London could heal because it absorbs her power. But then Icarus says,
Deviants have never done that in the past.
You idiot! Of course they haven't done that in the past. They haven't killed any of you in the past. This line is completely useless, and I don't know why you would say this. When we look back outside, Cersei is still kneeling by Ajax, until the gold glowy thing that Ajax uses to communicate with Arisham pops out, then goes into Cersei. I don't know why it took so long for this to happen. If Cersei walked away before this, would she just have never gotten it? What prompted it to happen if her being there didn't immediately prompt it to happen? Well anyway, Arisham says,
Cersei, it is almost time.
Then heads out. Icarus suggests that it is possible that this wasn't Arisham, and instead was Madweary, which is spelled like this for some reason. Then we're thrusted into another flashback, where we see a kid that's standing in the middle of a flaming city, where people are getting killed left and right, and the kid does absolutely nothing. Doesn't run, even when a statue is going to fall directly onto them. Makari saves this child, then runs over to the other Eternals, where Phastos reveals a device that shows the location of deviants. This device brings up some problems that are quite important later in the movie, so don't forget about it. Druig explains why they should stop humans from what they're doing, but Thena goes sicko mode and starts attacking people. Pretty lucky this happened now when they were doing nothing, rather than when they had to fend off deviants, because if it was earlier, some of them probably would have died. So they fight her until Gilgamesh knocks her out, and they talk about Madweary, which is what is happening to Thena. And the conversation has some pretty stupid lines.
I thought Madweary was a myth.
How could she think this? If none of the Eternals have told her about it, she wouldn't know about it at all. If she had been told about it by the other Eternals, she would know it's real, because they wouldn't know about it unless they knew it was real. I don't know where she could get this idea that it's a myth from. Phastos responds with,
There is no cure, so no one really talks about it.
Which is again stupid, because people talk about diseases with no cure all the time. Are cancer and Alzheimer's not talked about? They're actually more talked about than most diseases, because having no cure means people are stuck with them when they get them. Yet another stupid, useless line. Thena then wakes up, and Ajax explains how she needs to wipe her memory, but Druig is... I just found how that line is delivered very funny. He throws a tantrum and takes over all the soldiers raiding the city. This would probably make a significant change to history, unless his actions had no effect because the remaining townspeople died out due to diseases and the like, or the Spanish sent more troops later. Still gonna change history even if all the residents of Tenochtitlan die out due to other means. So then Gilgamesh says he'll stay with Thena, and Ajax says everyone can go out on their own because the deviants are gone. Then we go back to the present day. I have no knowledge of Bollywood to know if this is accurate to real Bollywood, so we'll ignore this part. When it finishes, Kingo sees the Eternals who came to see him and uses a cover story.
My friends from college are here!
Interesting cover that I guess makes sense. Surely it will continue to make sense later, right? So they then talk to Kingo, and he considers staying with his crew to shoot a movie, instead of going with his fellow heroes to save the world. The entire purpose he's here. Great. And his valet Karun makes better choices than he does. Then, ew, BTS plays while we're on Kingo's private jet, and he's making a documentary about the Eternals to share with the world. He asks Sprite to share, and she instead disappears. Right here, I 100% thought Icarus was going to sit on her. I don't know how he knows she's gone. Kingo then asks Cersei to share about herself, and she tells about the things she's turned a rock into, including air, which brings into question the limits of her powers. If she can turn a rock into air, can she turn air into something? Because if so, she's using her powers really badly. But aside from that, she could turn the ground under the deviant into air, so it falls into a pit. Kingo is unsatisfied with this, and tells her to think about it and he'll just get back to her part of the documentary. It's weird he'd just spontaneously start recording her if he wanted something more organized, but whatever. Sprite questions how he was able to be the star of movies for over 100 years without anyone becoming suspicious, which apparently he has done by pretending to be each successive member of the family line. The logistics of this are a nightmare. So each member of the family looks exactly the same, becomes a Bollywood star, pops into and out of existence during a certain time period in their life. No member of this line has ever been seen at the same time as any other, and either no wife was ever seen despite this amount of generations of having a son, or even more complicated, he has a fake wife every generation that has to know the secret. Like, how could they not? And if this is the case, not a single one let the secret get out? It's insane that nobody would be suspicious at this point, with so many factors of weirdness. But okay, he found the solution to hide the fact that he never ages. Cool!
Right. You abandoned me in Macedonia.
Okay, that doesn't sound like a nice thing to do, but I'm sure he has a good reason, right?
People freak out when they notice that you don't age.
So after his explanation of how he made it not a problem that he doesn't age, his excuse for why he abandoned Sprite was that she doesn't age. I mean, sure, keeping a child not aging a secret is more difficult than for someone his own age, but still, with this elaborate of a plan for his own life, surely he could figure out something for Sprite, or at least hide her, right? Kingo really doesn't seem to care about his family. Sprite says,
I thought we were friends.
Which clearly makes Kingo realize he screwed up, because he stops recording and proceeds to change the subject. Which leads to him saying,
we should have all stayed together.
Dude, you are the one who abandoned her. What is wrong with this guy? Finally, we arrive in Australia to find a newly dead deviant. So I guess there are more than just the one they fought. They go up to Gilgamesh's house, and when Gilgamesh comes out, he greets them, asks who Karun is, and when Karun answers, he says that he's Kingo's valet. Gilgamesh compares him to
Alfred in Batman.
The fact that DC exists in this universe is, well, a bit strange considering Marvel stories are facts in this universe, and thus the comics didn't exist in the same way. We see Captain America comics in the first Captain America movie, but they're more of a historical fiction comic, I guess, because Captain America really exists. I'll give it a pass because DC came before Marvel, and thus the existence of DC and its characters doesn't depend on the existence of Marvel. However, it's still strange that there were real superheroes on Earth since 5000 BC. They also changed a lot of history. But whatever comic characters still exist aren't even close to the biggest problems with this movie. Icarus tells Gilgamesh that Ajax died, which Sprite backs up with,
It's true, buddy.
Which is kind of a weird sounding line to me. The use of the word buddy just seems strange. And Gilgamesh drops his pie. Is this supposed to be funny or something? I don't know. Also, this clearly isn't enough dropped to be the remnants of the entire pie. But when Gilgamesh breaks the pan, the pie is gone. So I don't know what happened to the rest of it. They go to see Thena, who is in Mad Weary mode at the moment, but Sprite calms her down with an illusion. Also mentions something interesting.
Goddess of war.
So the Eternals were the basis for various mythologies, thus Thena was the basis for Athena, the goddess of war. But in Thor Love and Thunder, Zeus is an actual god, whatever that means at this point. Which is strange in terms of how Greek mythology formed, but that's not this movie's fault.
Hey, who's your gardener?
They're in a desert with no plants around. This joke doesn't work. They go to eat, talk, and exchange various jokes. And some questionable continuity about Asgardian stuff comes up, but all I can gather is that it's possible these things have happened, but we just haven't heard about them before.
Thor used to follow me around when he was a little kid. Now he's a famous Avenger and won't return my calls.
And I guess Thor just never thought to look for the Eternals whenever he needed help defeating a foe. I don't know exactly what Kingo means when he says Thor won't return his calls, but he probably should be returning them whenever he needs help. They could probably help Thor because even though his conflicts don't involve deviants, they're technically not human conflicts. But Kingo bringing up an Avenger leads to Sprite asking who they think will lead the Avengers next, and Icarus says,
I could lead them.
"Bro, you're not supposed to interfere in human conflicts. You can't join the Avengers, much less lead them." He promptly gets roasted by Gilgamesh, the least bad Eternal in this movie.
Ajax didn't even choose you to lead us.
Whoa!
Cersei then leaves and Gilgamesh follows her, and we find out that Gilgamesh didn't know about the unprecedented global earthquake, because he thought it wasn't real and he was just drunk. What? Things you weren't even near would be knocked over. You can't just attribute all of that to being drunk. Cersei then tries to speak with Arishem, bringing us the worst scene in the movie, probably any MCU movie, but only because Loki was a TV show. Cersei has the gold orb thing activate and start her Skype call with Arishem. She reports the earthquake, and Arishem just says,
"It is a side effect of the emergence."
I don't know why he's saying that when she doesn't know what it is, which she definitely doesn't know, because she asks what it is right after. So Arishem needs to reveal the true purpose of the Eternals' mission, and this is where it gets really bad. First, we learn that Earth is an egg. Pretty cool. The Eternals were sent here to help the celestial Tiamut be born, which requires
vast amounts of energy from intelligent life.
What energy does intelligent life produce? And where is the line drawn at intelligent life? On Earth, it's probably only humans. But how intelligent does life have to be to produce this energy? Does Racket Raccoon produce energy but normal raccoons don't? Does Groot produce energy? If they want more energy, why not just farm humans? It shouldn't matter how they develop as long as they're intelligent. But anyway, this is why they fight the deviants. Because the deviants kill humans, which lowers the amount of intelligent life on Earth. So at this point, the human population has reached a required amount because of the blip. But wait a minute. Let's think about this a bit more. We don't have an exact timeline of when Eternals takes place, but we know it's pretty soon after Hulk's snap, because things are being attributed to the blip, and also from another line later in the movie. So the implication is that bringing half the population back boosted humanity to the required amount for Tiamut to be born. But there's a problem here. The snap had to have caused a lot of deaths, with pilots being snapped away, killing everyone left unsnapped in the vehicle, motor accidents as empty cars run into other cars. Anybody who depended on somebody else who got snapped away is probably dead, as well as the depression of half humanity just disappearing probably caused a high suicide rate. In Endgame, they mostly glossed over the effects of the snap as we only see 5 years later, but it had to have caused a lot of death. And during the snap, I'm guessing population growth isn't going to be very high either, because everyone's going to be too depressed to prioritize continuing the human race. I mean, Tony did it, but how common is that really going to be? So we're at less than half the normal global birth rate, and the death rate will be at least half because there's nothing about the snap helping that very much. Then Hulk snap happens and everybody comes back. Not everybody is surviving that either. Even if we go on the interpretation that he brought everyone back safely like Feige said, the limit of safely only extends so far. Everyone is going to die at some point. What counts as bringing back safely? Were people brought back into the middle of the road? In a place where they couldn't get back from on foot? We'll never know, but this for sure will have caused some deaths too. So overall, the human population would have increased very little if at all. So at best, it's very contrived that the snap happened narrowly before the emergence would have happened, if not outright impossible that it is happening this early after the blip. The emergence happening after the blip is also important, for a reason that will come up later. This is far from the worst thing in the scene, so let's keep moving. We see a visualization of what the emergence will look like, and show us that we are dealing with a world-ending threat in this movie. Yay, more stakes.
But everyone on Earth will die.
No, really? The Earth exploding will make everyone on Earth die. What an astute observation! And if all the planets we see in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are still intact, is Earth just unlucky then? Or do they somehow have less of a population than Earth? They're so advanced, that doesn't seem right. So then Arishem says,
The end of one life, Cersei, is the beginning of another.
And says that Celestials are necessary for the universe to continue, because they create suns that galaxies form around, and wait. This is a big problem. Let's hold up a second. Our universe has reasons for why it works the way it does. Gravity causes planets and suns to be made. It doesn't just happen. You can't just change something this fundamental about the universe when gravity and all other scientific laws exist here as well. You've broken our understanding of space in this universe, and that's not a very good thing. And how did our solar system develop the same way if this is how it works in this universe? It's the same deal as the Eternals changing history, then things ending up the same, but on a much larger scale. Okay, well, putting aside how that doesn't work, this is an interesting moral dilemma. Allowing all of humanity to die in order to continue the functioning of the universe and trillions of future lives, or save humanity at the loss of these future lives. I sure hope this movie explores this idea thoroughly. We then learn from Arishem that Ajak
has helped many Celestials to emerge over millions of years.
And the rest of the Eternals have too. Surely they didn't fit into all the planets they helped with though, right? Not everyone in the universe is humanoid, and they seem to want to hide among the people of Earth, so that wouldn't really work across millions of years. But here is where we get to the really bad part. Maybe not as big of a problem as breaking space, but it's quite a lot dumber. Cersei, after being told that she's been doing this for millions of years, responds by saying that it's her first mission, which leads to Arishem showing her a big green place called the World Forge.
It is here that I built and programmed the Eternals.
Oh boy. They're robots. Do you have any idea how stupid that is and how many problems it causes? First, to talk about the design of their abilities, because past that it gets really complicated. Why do they each have one power, and at that, why do some of them have powers that would leave them defenseless against deviants? Why give Sprite illusion powers instead of a different power that could be used to fight deviants? And why make Cersei able to change things into other things if it can't be used on deviants? And Druig's power is so stupid. He was given the power to control humanity when their entire purpose was not to interfere with humanity unless deviants are involved. If humanity is at a point where their technology can't fend off deviants, and that's why the Eternals are here, how is this power going to be useful at all for anything other than making them retreat? Do they not think humans are smart enough to retreat on their own? Giving him this power is just tempting him to use it to interfere with humans when the Eternals aren't supposed to do that. On top of that, a few humans dying because he doesn't have this power is better than him having this mostly useless power instead of one he can fight with, right? Not that they will, because humans can run away on their own. And even worse, deviants have simpler minds than humans. Why wouldn't it be easier to make him able to control the deviants? And this would instantly win every battle they ever did. Giving him the ability to control deviants is so much better than giving him the ability to control humans. The rest of them have powers that make enough sense to give them, I guess. But why do each of them, other than Icarus, only have one power rather than multiple? As for their physical design, I don't know why he wouldn't just make them out of a material durable enough to withstand hits from deviants. But more importantly, why would you make one of them deaf? I mean, sure, it's cool that they got to use a deaf actress as a superhero, but make it a superhero that's not a robot! If Makari wasn't designed to be deaf and instead became deaf from an accident, then Ajak would be able to heal her. Or Arishem could probably fix her if necessary. The excuse I've heard is that it's to protect her ears from sonic booms if she runs that fast. but we never see sonic booms happen no matter how fast she runs. Or so I thought, until I learned that apparently the ramming move she does is a sonic boom. But she runs near the other Eternals all the time, and does this move near the other Eternals, which has no effect on their hearing whatsoever. Alongside that, she's a freaking robot. She could be designed to turn off her ears when running fast. Furthermore, why is Sprite a child? What use could her being a child possibly have? And even if there was an important reason for the Eternals to need someone who could pass off as a child, she has illusion powers. She could pretend to be a child if she wanted to. Why is Phastos, let's say, not as fit as he could be? Every single one of them should be designed to be incredibly fit, because there is no advantage to being out of shape. And why can they eat? Do they need to eat? I don't know, but we see them do it. Why would this be a feature if it's entirely unnecessary? Now on to the programming part. Because oh boy, Arishem sucks at this. The Eternals are created for the sole purpose of protecting humanity from the Deviants to cause the emergence to happen. So why are they programmed to be allowed to do literally anything else? They should in no way be able to feel emotions like loving each other. That's just a distraction. And caring for humanity, that would get in the way of their purpose of ending humanity, and possibly even make them want to stop the emergence. They have the ability to find Earth beautiful, remember that line? Care for humanity as a whole, and fall in love with humans. And guess what comes out of it? Spoiler alert, they want to stop the emergence. Why not program them so they can't think of their own accord to the point where they want to stop the emergence? Seriously, they were built and programmed for one purpose, and it is in their capacity to go directly against that one purpose. And what's the point of erasing their memories every time anyway? You keep them from knowing their true purpose because they might not like that idea? Then program them to be okay with it so you never have to wipe their memory and they are just fine with fulfilling their purpose. This was better when they did it in Ninjago. Arishem is the biggest idiot in the MCU, literally and figuratively. But wait, there's more. Literally, Arishem shows her hundreds of Eternals. Why are there only 10 on Earth? The more he adds to Earth, the faster they eradicate the Deviants. Then they can leave. Or they can't, because he's stupid and makes them wait until the emergence. Or if you need 10 of them on Earth all the way up until the emergence, send down more than 10, then bring the rest back other than the 10 that you need to stay. Cersei asks why she doesn't remember any of this, so Arishem says,
because your memories are erased and reset after each emergence.
First of all, erased and reset is redundant. Also, like I said before, why do this instead of just programming them to be fine with the emergence so they can just know about it?
I created the Deviants, Cersei.
Oh boy, yet another mistake by Arishem. So he sent them down to eliminate anything that would be a threat to intelligent life, but then
they evolved, became predators themselves.
They didn't become predators. They already hunted the predators, therefore making them predators already. But whatever. You made super predators that hunted their prey to extinction. What did you expect? Also, they were made to hunt the other predators, and guess who eventually becomes the apex predators, especially after all predators for intelligent life are wiped out? Wiping out all predators isn't necessarily a good thing anyway. Ecosystems require those predators to keep their prey in check. Not like they eliminated all predators anyway, because the ecosystem is the same as it is in real life. All kinds of predators are still out there. So he made the Eternals to protect intelligent life from the Deviants, meaning he messed up both of his attempts to make things to help with the emergence. He should have added a self-destruct button or something in case they started hunting intelligent life, like they ended up doing. Well, this is just great. But remember when Arishem said that Eternals have been doing their job for millions of years across different planets? Why is he still sending Deviants down then? You'd think after the first 100, 1,000, maybe million years of the Eternals doing their job, Arishem would have the bright idea to stop sending Deviants down to planets. Arishem is the dumbest character in the MCU. Dumber than the Watcher, dumber than everyone in Earth 838, dumber than Kang, Wenwu, any stupid character you can think of in this franchise. Arishem's last words before ending the Skype call are,
"Do not fail me."
You're like the strongest being in the universe, besides Kang, and all you can do is just tell them not to fail you? He's so ineffective when he shouldn't be for any reason. We then cut to the Eternals back at Gilgamesh and Thena's house, where Cersei has told them about everything she just learned. Sprite concludes,
Something must have gone wrong. Athena was remembering all the other planets we were sent to, and everyone dying during the emergence.
And that's why Athena has Madweary. So yet another thing Arishem messed up. Great! But if it's because of Arishem resetting her memories improperly way back, why does it not manifest until 6,500 years of them being on Earth? Shouldn't it have happened way earlier? It doesn't make sense for it to not happen for 6,500 years after Arishem messed it up, then all of a sudden it pops up out of nowhere.
I thought we were heroes. Turns out we were the bad guys.
Ain't that a bit on the nose for Phase 4? Why are they allowed to think they are the bad guys for fulfilling their purpose? Arishem must suck at programming if they can think this.
Every time innocent lives have been sacrificed for the greater good, it turns out to be a mistake.
Well, that's not true. That's really disrespectful to Iron Man, actually. He sacrificed his life for the greater good. Was that a mistake? Unless you don't count him as innocent because he was part of the combat. But let's say you have to kill 5 innocent people, or the entire universe explodes. Would that be a mistake? What about a more real example? When there have been bombings of civilians in any number of wars. Sure, that's not necessarily a good thing, but sometimes it's better than the alternative. And even then, why are you allowed to think this? This is contradicting your entire purpose for being programmed.
There has to be a way Tiamat can emerge without destroying the Earth.
No? Did you see the visualization? If he gets born, the Earth is...
gone. Reduced to atoms.
Okay, maybe not that far, but it'll be destroyed for sure. They then decide to find Druig so they can put the Celestial to sleep. When they arrive in Druig's little town, there's some incorrect Spanish. The subtitles say, "We're looking for Druig. Is he here?" Yes. But what was actually said was, "We're looking for Druig. Where is he?" Yes. Nice job, movie. Then the guy gets possessed by Druig. Then everyone in the town does. If these people know that Druig could control them at any time, why are they staying here? Are they some kind of insane cult that he got together? That doesn't make sense. I don't know how he could arrange that. So the other option, he forces them to stay here. That's horrifying. Sounds not unlike a certain other MCU character, although on a much smaller scale, of course. We cut to after they tell him everything, and he says,
"This forest is the last place we all lived together.
And
I protected these people for 20 generations now, from the outside world and from themselves."
Which is around 400 years. They speak Spanish as well, which leads me to believe he took all the people invading Tenochtitlan into this town against their will, and kept them here for 20 generations. I mean, sure, what they were doing wasn't great, but keeping them and their descendants in a town against their will where they can be mind-controlled at any time? That's awful. And I guess you could say Druig is just a bad person. But first of all, he seems to care about humanity earlier, and also, he contradicts this later as well. Druig then says,
"You're kind, my friend. You will be responsible for your own extinction one day."
You just learned about the emergence, and you're saying this? I'm pretty sure, from your point of view, it seems like their extinction is going to be caused by a celestial blowing up the planet, rather than something the humans themselves do. Then they have some petty arguments, and a few stupid jokes thrown in. And Kingo says something right for once.
Druig sucks.
Then we probably get the only part of the movie I like. A short conversation between Gilgamesh and Thena, where they do the
"I love you in every universe"
line, but better.
Thank you.
For what?
For always taking care of me.
I'll do it again on any planet.
We then get a conversation between Kingo and Sprite that eventually leads to Kingo saying that Sprite is in love with Icarus. Ugh. Why would you set this up? It's such an awful thing to do. I know she's actually like millions of years old, or in terms of memories, 7,000. But that's some real anime logic right there. This makes every scene going forward with both Sprite and Icarus really uncomfortable, and does the same for earlier ones on rewatch.
Why did Arishem make me this way?
Because he's an idiot. Then we see that Karun is recording this with his backup camera, Sprite goes over, grabs it, and smashes it, without any pullback from Karun. Is this guy too stupid to pull the camera back when she grabs for it, and too weak to stop her from yanking it out of his hands? Cersei and Icarus are then having a conversation when Icarus gets grabbed by a deviant right before he tells Cersei something important. That's inconvenient. So we kick off another deviant fight scene. So Cersei is getting attacked by deviants, and again, why do some of the Eternals not have powers to defend themselves? So Kingo saves her by shooting these two deviants, and one of them he uses a super strong shot on which knocks it into a shed so it's trapped and or incapacitated. But what happened to the one that went over to the right? It's just gone for now, I guess. Maybe it got incapacitated by a single shot? Which is strange because the other one actually survived and is still conscious after getting trapped in a flaming shed after getting hit by a normal shot, then a big shot.
You need action sequences?
Sounds like a Disney Plus show writer. There are two of them soon after, so I guess that deviant that disappeared was just chilling off screen until that point. Cersei, while turning the building the humans are in into metal, tanks this hit, and from what we've seen before, the Eternals seem to have somewhat inconsistent durability, but this is far from the worst. Icarus is fighting a deviant too, and he goes over near Gilgamesh and Thena, where they see the special healing deviant. Thena goes into Mad Weary mode because of this, and it makes you think, shouldn't this have happened over her first 6,500 years of fighting deviants on this planet, and not just have popped up 500 years ago? We go back over to the other deviants, and Druig is controlling all the humans, making them shoot guns at a deviant, even allowing some of them to die. Why don't you just make them back up? Guns are ranged weapons. Great job protecting them, like you said you built this town for. Cersei uses a pretty clever use of her powers here, turning part of a tree into water so it falls and making the rest steel so it could do more damage to a deviant. But first of all, this could have killed Druig. He was right there and you gave him no warning whatsoever. And second of all, just keep using the move where you change the ground into something the deviant will sink into, then make it something hard so it can't escape. This one doesn't have the tendrils, so it would have no way to pull itself out, meaning it could be stuck and you could kill it however you want afterwards. Cersei then argues Druig into letting the people go so they can run away. Notice how people can run away without him controlling them. His powers are so useless. It was only mildly useful here because of a technology that humans didn't have for a long time. Give him the ability to control deviants, it would be so useful, they could never lose. Or at least give him something he can defend himself and others with in all situations, not just when humans have technology strong enough to fight deviants. Then the deviants Icarus and Gilgamesh were fighting head back to the camp, except the special one, so Gilgamesh tells Icarus to go back to the camp. Why would you do this? Go back with him, get him to carry Thena if you don't want to leave her here alone. You being here fighting the deviant alone means if you start losing, you're done for, nobody is here to help you. When we go back to the other deviant, Kingo is charging up a shot, so Sprite stabs it to distract it, and that actually worked? Why doesn't it swipe at her? It just shook around. Then Kingo does this super unnecessary move to kill it. It was for the camera, I guess. Icarus is fighting a deviant in the sky, then somehow flies in at the right time and spot to save Druig, despite the fact that Druig and this deviant are not visible from where Icarus was. And this is only necessary because Druig was in danger because he didn't have a power that he could use to protect himself. No, I will not stop bringing that up, it's so stupid that it's the case. Icarus gets tackled by a deviant. I don't know why he didn't back up or fly higher. When Cersei goes over to help Icarus, the deviant knocks her into a pool of water. Notice how deep it is. She could stand up fully and be shorter than the pool. That will be an important detail in a little bit. So then, instead of turning the water around the deviant into a strong material she couldn't break out of, she tries something that she has said in the past she can't do with her power. The worst part is, it works. Why does it work? She couldn't do this before, now it just works because the plot needs it? Wow. Just... wow. Well, she changed the deviant into wood, and for some reason that makes it into the shape of a tree. I don't know what they were thinking. Did whoever made this decision think that wood just naturally gravitates into the shape of a tree? This isn't how her powers work. It always keeps things the same shape. And it's not like making this would be any different. Get it? Wood? Anyway, all of a sudden the pool is not even above her knees. I know a lot of water fell out, but that's not what I mean. I mean the bottom of the pool itself the thing she is standing on right now, is significantly higher than when she fell into the pool. We go back to Gilgamesh. Oh yeah, by the way, Gilgamesh is still here fighting this thing, yet Icarus is making sure Cersei is okay. You can still fly, go over and help Gilgamesh not die, because he is more at risk than Cersei is right now. And him dying would make your enemy stronger. For some reason when the Deviant is healing, Gilgamesh doesn't rush it, he just lets it heal. If you do that, you're never gonna win. The Deviant sees Thena and goes for her, and for some reason when Gilgamesh is trying to stop it, his power punches suck all of a sudden. A little bit ago, it knocked it back super far, now it barely flinches? And remember when I said it was a bad idea to leave him here alone? This is why. Gilgamesh is dead, because they didn't all go to the camp together. Come to think of it, how does an organic being absorb a power from a robot? It can't just steal the programming or energy. And it also gains the ability to speak. How does that make any sense? This deviant's name is Crow, by the way, just so I can refer to him easier, although his name isn't said once in the movie. So Crow says that he gains the memories of the Eternals he absorbs, which doesn't really make sense either. An organic being can't just download a digital drive and get all its information. Crow gives a little speech instead of killing Thena right here because he just said he wants to kill the Eternals. And this speech lasts long enough for Icarus to scare him away. Well, actually Gilgamesh is still alive, even though his power and memories were taken. So if Crow absorbs his memories, how is Gilgamesh still functioning and saying something he wouldn't remember to say if his memories are gone? Unless Crow is making an organic copy of digital data. Yeah, I don't even want to begin to figure out how this works, because short answer, it's not going to. So they then have a funeral where they burn his body. So the Eternals are flammable robots, I guess? Then we get a really dumb conversation between Druig and Cersei.
When I left, I thought about taking over the minds of every human on this planet.
Why didn't you?
Because without their flaws, they wouldn't be human.
Well, that directly conflicts with him being in this village with all these people. Remember when he said,
I protected these people for 20 generations now, from the outside world and from themselves.
Protecting them from themselves sounds quite a bit like you're not allowing their flaws. So he changed his mind about humanity, then continued to do the same exact thing anyway? That doesn't really line up.
They have a conscience now. That makes them more dangerous.
That is completely untrue. Something having a conscience can't possibly make it more dangerous than just a wild beast. All it can do now is consider not killing you, which means the effect of it having a conscience is either nothing, or it becomes less dangerous. It won't encourage something to be more violent. Druig then responds with the most shallow, I am 14 and this is deep type statement.
No, Cersei. That makes them us.
Then Druig says he doesn't have enough power to put a Celestial to sleep, so Cersei suggests finding Phastos. We are then dropped into... Oh. Dropped is maybe a poor choice of words. We are then put into Hiroshima in 1945. Why would you do this in the middle of a superhero movie? I have no idea. Remember how the wheel was invented much later in the MCU? Well, despite that, the atomic bomb was invented in the exact same year. Don't know how that happened if they were that far behind back in 575 BC. I don't know how or why Ajax and Phastos are here. They don't really have a method of transportation, and with the atomic bomb happening recently, wouldn't the war still be going on? Or be recent enough that it would be hard to get into Japan? Especially from America, where they presumably are. At least, that's where we see Ajax and Phastos later on. Phastos blames himself because his technology helped them eventually reach this point. But why was he allowed to give them technology in the first place? I guess it's technically not interfering in human conflicts directly, but it's still pretty majorly interfering. And giving them technology will eventually lead to technology that is used in conflicts, which is interfering with them. Also, it led to quite a lot of death, setting back the emergence. This event leads Phastos to think,
our mission was a mistake.
Which he really should be programmed to not be able to think. Ditto for him saying,
they're not worth saving.
Okay, so that was a tone shift. Now back to the present day, where after giving up on humanity, Phastos now has a human family. An interesting 180 that we don't really get the reasoning for other than love, I guess. But why can the Eternals fall in love with humans again? That's a pretty poor design choice, like I said earlier. Also, if he had given up on humanity, how did he meet a human to fall in love with anyway? Pay close attention to the cover story here.
These are my friends from college.
So I imagine, for a racially diverse group, Friends from College wouldn't be a very believable cover in 1575 AD. Also, women weren't really allowed to go to college back then either. Or maybe it wouldn't be a good cover for any group at all. I don't know what college dynamics were like back then. So that begs the question, how did they arrange this cover when the last time they met was in 1575 AD? Kingo had the same story. Sprite used it as well, although before this point, you could say that she got the idea from Kingo, who originally made it up. Now it's a story they coordinated before splitting up, I guess, even though it was too far in the past for this cover story to make sense. Phastos' kid instantly recognizes Icarus as Superman. How did he not get recognized before this point? Nobody in the Bollywood studio seems to recognize him, and neither does anyone on the street here. I guess people could have recognized him off-screen, but we get no evidence of that.
You were with the cape and you were shooting laser beams out of your eyes.
I don't know how the kid remembers what he looks like well enough to recognize him here, yet doesn't remember that he doesn't wear a cape. Phastos gives a new explanation for why they can't interfere in conflicts, because conflicts lead to war, which leads to new advancements in technology and medicine. Here's the problem though. Phastos is thousands of years ahead by 575 BC. War is an unnecessary loss of life delaying the emergence if he can just give them that technology. He says their purpose was
to increase the population at all costs. Just farming humans as food for the Celestial.
But they really went about a poor way of doing it. If that's your purpose here, why not just farm humans? Or at least help them develop really quickly without any conflicts so less death happens. Their current strategy for increasing population where they don't interfere with human conflicts is not a very good strategy. If you were farming them, like actual farmers, the population would have been quite a lot higher than it is now.
It's like you'd given up on humans.
I got lucky, okay? I have a family now.
How did he even meet this guy that became his husband if he had given up on humans? What reason did he have to be around humans? And why would he want to start a family even after he met this guy if he had given up on them? I guess this movie's excuse is that love supersedes all, but I don't buy it. Again, that's just poor design from Arishem. Then Phastos doesn't want to help them.
I cannot help you. I am never leaving them. I'm sorry.
That is such stupid reasoning. The Earth is going to explode in a few days, killing all humanity, and you choose to stay with your family instead of trying to stop that? This isn't an Iron Man and Endgame situation, where you're risking your life with your family in order to save other people. This is risking your life with your family in order to save everyone, including your family. Either you let them die in the emergence, or you leave them for a bit for a chance to save them from the emergence. Not a hard choice. Phastos talks about how he doesn't use his powers anymore, and Icarus is pretty certain he is lying and lasers the glass doors. How is he sure of this? It looks like some magic rune thing or whatever pops up when he lasers it. I don't know how Phastos' powers work. But how is Icarus so sure that he wasn't just about to break open Phastos' house? Then, he concludes that the table he has been touching the whole time, that feels like wood, is made out of vibranium. And he is wrong. This was just done for a dumb joke.
Fall collection. IKEA.
But if you think about it, then it gets dumber. Icarus correctly assessed that this normal-looking door across the room was specially designed to withstand more, with enough confidence that he would laser it. And he was right. When Phastos wouldn't really have a reason to do this anyway, it's not like anyone is going to attack him in his house. Then he thinks about this table he has been leaning on the entire time, that feels like wood, and concludes, yeah, this is vibranium, with enough certainty to punch it. So the thing he had no way to properly assess, he got right. And the thing he should have been able to properly assess, he got wrong. And all of this happened for a dumb joke. Phastos' husband convinces him to go, so we get Phastos saying goodbye to his kid, and a kiss with his husband for representation points. Even though Eternals falling in love still narratively makes no sense and is a huge design flaw. Anyway, we arrive at a dig site in Iraq, where Druig makes all the people drive away. But when exactly is he going to let them go? If he lets them go, they won't remember why they left, and will probably go back to the site to check it out. So is he just going to be subconsciously controlling them throughout the entire time the Eternals are here? Kingo does more recording for his documentary, which includes this line after Phastos gets scared.
As you can see, being an Eternal does not preclude you from having human emotions, such as cowardice.
That's a design flaw. Emotion is completely irrelevant to their mission. Cowardice would do nothing but slow down their mission. As if they are scared of a deviant, they're not really gonna try killing it. Makari is here and has been for centuries. She asks if they are going to go home, and we cut to Phastos doing science things. Thena is messing around with a sword that Sprite mistakes for the ebony blade. A bit of foreshadowing there. Kingo is telling Makari about how Olympia doesn't exist and the world is ending. Icarus and Druig swap the emerald tablet and some Twinkies. Again, I don't know why the Eternals eat. Druig flirts with Makari and Phastos asks,
"Are you two?"
while gesturing at them. But here's the thing. I'm not too knowledgeable on this topic, but I don't think that gesture is sign language. Yet there are subtitles here like it is. If it is, I couldn't find it, so feel free to tell me in the comments. So anyway, this led me into checking what sign language is used in the movie, and it's American Sign Language. Let me say that again. The Eternals, who arrived in 5000 BC, almost 7,000 years before America, use American Sign Language. What were they thinking making this decision? It seems like they didn't think about it at all. There exists a very much copium explanation for this, which is that in the MCU, the Eternals invented American Sign Language. But that means that after they broke up, one of them was in America and taught people that language, somehow gaining enough credibility for it to become a real sign language that's used widely, and yet they are still not well known. Makari definitely didn't do it. There's no way she could make it through teaching someone this sign language without speaking, considering how impatient and easily bored she is. Another bit of fantastic world building. Anyway, this comment from Phastos for some reason prompts Druig to tell him,
Phastos, I need to control the mind of a Celestial.
Which is a weird line and also unprompted. And Phastos is already ready for this for some reason. Did he just finish figuring it out? Or has he known what he was going to do this whole time but just didn't tell anybody yet for some reason? Then we get this jumble of nonsense line.
When Arisha made us, he imbued us with infinite cosmic energy.
So there's no reason that they each only have one power. If they have infinite cosmic energy, just give each of them all the powers. They don't lack the energy for it. And also, if this is the case, why do their powers have limitations? Infinity means a limitless amount. They shouldn't struggle doing anything if they have infinite energy. And even worse, is that the infinite cosmic energy is there
to keep our bodies regenerating.
Shouldn't you just heal from everything then? Why was Ajax necessary if you had infinite energy to regenerate yourself? If you can sustain injuries, your infinite energy doesn't seem to be doing a very good job. Phastos made bracelets that will shut down the regeneration process so their bodies can
accumulate extra cosmic energy.
So you're accumulating extra cosmic energy from your infinite source by stopping a process that uses a finite amount of energy. Right.
Well, if the deviants can absorb our energy...
How does that even make sense? It's not like you can eat a battery and get more energy. I don't know how a deviant would just steal the infinite energy that's inside an Eternal. Can they steal the source of energy or something? I have no idea. So his plan is to combine all of their infinite energy to give one of them infinity times 8 energy, I guess? And he calls this
a unimind.
Despite it not being related to their minds at all, it's just connecting their energy. Everyone agrees that it's an awful name. Kingo suggests
Brainstorm,
which is bad for the same reasons. They argue about what their plan is for after Tiamat is put to sleep, and Kingo says,
what if we end up accidentally killing Tiamat? We could be responsible for billions of lives not being created across the universe.
Which is a good point, although it's probably going to be more like trillions. I hope they properly explored this side of the argument. Kingo specifically says this and asks Icarus what he thinks. Icarus says,
Ajax chose Cersei to lead us. Cersei should decide.
So Sprite responds with,
forget who Ajax chose. You're the strongest. You should be making this decision.
What are you, Wakandan? Usually it's not the strongest who makes the decisions, it's the one chosen to lead, or the smartest. Icarus disagrees, so Sprite storms off. Icarus follows her, then Kingo follows him. Kingo says,
I will follow you to the end like I always have.
Oh, like you did when you left your family to be on your own? And this makes Icarus say,
Not that you think I am.
And leave. and it triggers a flashback of him talking with Ajax.
How long do we have?
7 days.
I don't know how she has a precise time frame for when the emergence is going to happen, if there's no earthquakes or anything yet. When Ajax asks where Cersei is, Icarus responds,
London. She has a good life there.
So I guess he's been stalking her. Not weird at all. Ajax decides,
We should tell him the truth.
I mean,
We have to tell them the truth.
the reason?
Together we might be able to stop the emergence.
You're deciding to do this now? When you have 7 days? Why? That gives you so little time.
I have followed Arishan for millions of years, and I have never doubted him. Until now.
Yeah, so humanity is so special that over millions of years of doing this, they are the one time you have doubted Arishem, not the other far more advanced civilizations. And Icarus asks why. Ajax says that it's because
5 years ago, Thanos erased half of the population of the universe, but the people of this planet brought everyone back with a snap of a finger.
Oh, you mean the thing that you guys didn't help with at all when it delayed the emergence a ton, and you should have gotten involved for reasons I'll explain later? Well, what about when you doubted him back in 575 BC? That was far before Thanos, so humanity was already special before Thanos, I guess. Compared to all other civilizations in the universe? I just don't know about that one. I mean, they couldn't even invent the wheel. She says that she saw them
Laugh and love and create and dream.
like other civilizations haven't done those things in the past. I seriously don't get why this planet is any different from the others, to the point where it's not worth it, yet it was before.
I'll follow you to the end. As I always have.
Oh, so that's why what Kingo said triggered Icarus's flashback. So Icarus says he has something he has to show her, which is in Alaska apparently. It's more deviants, which were apparently trapped in a glacier but got out because of the emergence heating up the Earth's core. But remember this little gadget that Phastos had back in 1575 BC? The writers sure didn't. This is what made the Eternals think the deviants were eradicated. Yet there were still some deviants, they were just trapped in ice. So that blocks the machine from sensing them, apparently. You'd think a worldwide deviant sensor would catch that. Guess it just sucks. Or more likely, they forgot it existed when writing this part. Icarus says,
I tracked him here.
How did you do that exactly? I know they killed some oil workers, but this is out in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. And the clothes of the workers are still here, so it must have been pretty recent. I have no idea how you'd find them in the first week of them breaking out. So we then get to Icarus's terrible, terrible plan. Guess terrible plans run in the family, huh? So Icarus somehow suspected that Ajax would change her mind. So we get the first bit of Icarus's plan.
When the others realize something is happening to the Earth, they'll come to you. When they find your body, they'll know the deviants are back. They'll keep them busy until the emergence.
This is the basis to his plan, but I'm gonna ignore that for now. We'll touch on his plan after the flashback is over. Icarus still has faith in Arishem, so he pushes Ajax off the cliff to these deviants. And she's completely fine from the fall. I guess Eternals can take falls fine, but not cuts? While she's fighting off some of the deviants, our good friend Crow does the absorb thing, and that allows him to heal like we've seen. He also gives the other deviants wings and sharp tails and other stuff, somehow. Ajax didn't have wings. I don't know why he was able to do this. I guess this is kind of like healing, but Ajax doesn't seem to be able to boost the other Eternals, just heal them back to their normal state. And to heal she has to reach her hand out, and that's what Crow does as well, so I don't know. So Icarus flies Ajax to her house, and cries laser tears or something. I know this was meant to be him being so angry that he accidentally used his laser eyes, or I guess using them intentionally out of anger, but the first one doesn't really make sense, and the second one is dumb on his part, because he's just leaving evidence that could have been avoided. Also, notice how a little bit of laser starts a fire here, because usually his lasers seem to suck and only push things, not really do much damage. But with the flashback done, let's go back and look at Icarus's plan. So step 1 was to kill Ajax because she wanted to stop the emergence, and do this using the deviants so he isn't thought to have done it. Sure, that makes sense. Step 2 was to put her dead body at her house. This is where the plan gets bad. So by putting Ajax at the house, supposedly the others would go there, then they would find out the deviants are back and that would keep them busy. But what's the point of keeping them busy if they can't find out about the emergence in the first place? And this is also under the assumption that if they didn't see a deviant, they would have gone to find Ajax anyway, when they didn't do that when half the population got snapped away. If they don't see a deviant, they're not going to do anything. So why do you think they would try to find her when some earthquakes happen? And I don't know if Icarus knew about the gold orb in Ajax's chest, but he knew she speaks with Erisham, and the power hasn't been passed down to anyone else yet. So people going near her dead body is a risk, because they could get the orb like what happens to Cersei, therefore ruining his plan. When the emergence is found out about, the deviants are going to be ignored because the world ending is quite a bit more important. This plan was pretty awful, and clearly it doesn't work properly. Let me suggest a better plan. Kill Ajax, kill the deviants, then don't put Ajax at her house. Global earthquakes would happen, everyone would be confused, they would maybe try to get together, but wouldn't get enough information to stop the emergence, and thus the emergence would happen. It's really that simple. Icarus is the one who suggests they find the others in the first place. I don't know if that would have been their immediate course of action if he didn't suggest it. And even if it was, he's still encouraging something that endangers the emergence. And while Icarus's plan is going on, he doesn't help it very much. There's him encouraging them all to get together, as well as moments like this one,
Cersei should decide,
where he makes really bad decisions given his goal. Why let the person you know wants to stop the emergence decide, without so much as defending your position? Kingo is arguing against them. It's not like you arguing it will make anyone suspicious of what you've done. Instead, you're encouraging what you don't want. Overall, Icarus's plan started badly, then he executed it very poorly. So then, Cersei walks up to him, and he's at this place that they were last at 2,500 years ago. He says,
"Amazing how things change over time."
Her response?
Maybe we're the ones who've changed.
It's been 2.5 millennia. I'm pretty sure it's not just you who's changed. You had to give humanity the plow back then. Things are a little bit different, don't you think? There are so many stupid lines like this in the movie where they think they're being deep, but instead they fumble and say something that's just really dumb. Things have changed quite a lot over 2,500 years. It's not just you. Not that the Eternals really change over 2,500 years anyway. They haven't aged. I guess they have changed mentally, but compared to the world, you haven't really changed much. Icarus makes a pretty good case about the emergence being the Celestials giving and taking away life without bias, and how it's the natural order. Cersei responds with,
It's not natural to allow all life on an entire planet to be destroyed.
It has quite literally been the nature of the universe, for as long as it has existed. I don't care how much you don't like this idea, it's still natural, no matter what you say. This movie tries to present arguments for both allowing the emergence to happen and for stopping it, but the arguments for stopping it really suck. I wonder what they're going to choose in the end. When Icarus says,
"It'll all end soon,"
Cersei responds saying there is no end because
We'd carry on without our memories or free will.
Except they would still have their free will. You don't need your memories to have your free will, it's just there. Erisham doesn't take it away. Although of course I have to bring up the question again, why do they have free will in the first place? If Erisham was smart, then yes, he'd take away your free will. But he's not smart in the slightest. He's let you keep it all these millions of years you've been doing your job. He's not going to take it away now. Icarus again says he loves Cersei, which is another stupid thing Erisham shouldn't have allowed in their design. Then we move on to the next scene. When they're entering the ship, Cersei's orb activates and tells her that the emergence is starting. So Phastos tells Makari to find the point of emergence, but he doesn't use sign language for some reason. When she runs off, he stumbles to the side. I don't know how that would happen. You would stumble forward if you were giving her the device and therefore putting your weight forward, then she moved. But more importantly, Makari is running across the Earth, even though they have a device that shows them where the point of emergence is. So I don't know why she did this in the first place. Her route is really weird as well. She started in the Middle East with the goal of getting to the Indian Ocean, and ends up going through Brazil. That's a weird route. You'd think it would just be going a bit southwest, then you're there. We then see Druig and Thena talking, where we get this line, quite possibly the dumbest one in the movie.
Revenge won't bring peace for you, Thena.
Killing it.
But killing it might. Someone seriously wrote this out. it made it through someone else checking the script, if that happened, which at this point I'm not even sure it did. Then the line was said while they were recording the movie, and nobody stopped and thought, wait, but killing it is revenge! That response is really stupid! Let's change that line really quick. Revenge won't bring peace for you, Thena. But killing it might. We then see Icarus suiting up for no reason at all. It's not like the suits do anything. Cersei walks in and asks him what he's doing. He says,
I wanted you to leave this world in peace without knowing about the emergence.
well, as I explained earlier, your plan really sucked at keeping the knowledge of the emergence from them. Your actions directly led to Cersei figuring out what the emergence is. So Icarus walks up to the thing Phastos was working on, then he lasers it, making it immediately explode, which for some reason knocks Phastos back as well, which is weird.
I've let this go on long enough.
I don't know why he let it go on at all, other than so that we could get the twist flashback. Cersei then says,
You already knew about the emergence.
and despite Icarus walking up and lasering Phastos' creation with no explanation,
I'm not who you think I am.
and no evidence to the contrary, Kingo says,
No, he didn't.
why would you think this? You're gonna trust him, the guy who randomly got violent, over your leader who has no reason to lie about this? Icarus says,
I only wanted to protect you from the deviants.
which is dumb, because he could have killed them earlier. That would have been way better than his actual plan. Icarus explains his plan, then they figure out that he killed Ajax, and he tries to justify it, but doesn't really convince anyone. He poses the question,
If we gave humanity the choice, how many of them would be willing to die so that billions more could be born?
Phastos' answer is,
We're not giving them a choice.
hold up now, that's not a hero line. Yet again, Icarus' case is a lot more well presented than the other side. But we still act like Icarus is the villain here. And sure, Icarus isn't a good guy, he killed Ajax, but that doesn't mean his stance is incorrect. In fact, we get a lot better arguments for it. Phastos asks,
Is this why you're willing to kill?
which is a pretty stupid question. Of course it's the reason he's willing to kill. Then yells,
You are so pathetic!
with some interesting delivery. I get calling the villain pathetic if their motivation is because of their own shortcomings or in other similar situations. But here, Icarus is doing everything for the good of the universe. And it's not like he's pathetic physically either. He could kill you right now if he wanted to. In this situation, the line just doesn't work. Icarus says he exists for Ereshkigal, as does Phastos, who says,
I do not exist for Ereshkigal. I exist for my family.
which is a major design flaw. Ereshkigal probably should have programmed them to exist for him. Or maybe he tried but messed that up. Either way, this is the purpose you were built for. You probably should exist for it. Notice how Icarus and Phastos end up face to face right here. Then when Icarus turns, Phastos teleports back a few feet. Icarus tries to laser Makari, so Kingo jumps in front of her. Why would you do this if you're no more durable than she is, and she's fast enough that there's no way she'd get hit by it? Makari goes back to check on Kingo, and for some reason Icarus doesn't try to shoot her in this moment where she is not moving and is focused on Kingo. Makari runs away. Kingo tells Icarus,
Do not turn against your family.
okay, so who was the one that abandoned a member of your own family because of a problem that you solved for yourself later? Kingo is such a jerk and a hypocrite. Icarus says,
I will kill every one of you if I have to.
so that he can be framed as the villain. Then Sprite goes with him because of the really awkward thing they set up earlier. Kingo then reveals that he sides with Icarus, but just isn't willing to hurt anybody, so he decides that he's going to leave. Nice job not turning your back on family. I hate this character. But he again presents more good points about why the emergence should happen.
I love the people of this planet, but if you stop this emergence, you are preventing so many other worlds like this one from being created.
Again, the movie isn't really selling me on the other side like it is this one. Yet it thinks preventing the emergence is the right thing to do. Then, something he says next presents a strange idea.
I still have faith in Ereshkigal, but I refuse to hurt any of you for my beliefs.
So was this movie meant to be a religious allegory? This line makes it seem like that, but in reality they didn't do a lot of work towards it. So Kingo leaves, and Karun, instead of English, which we know he can speak, speaks Hindi, which I don't know if the other Eternals can speak, then leaves. They argue about Cersei killing a Celestial as a backup plan if Druig couldn't put it to sleep, but Cersei doesn't like that idea, so she leaves. She talks to Thena, who says that they should protect the people of Earth because if you love something, you protect it. Which again brings up the question, why can they love humanity? That just gets in the way of their goal. Phastos rushes in because he wants to use the orb thing inside Cersei to run the Unimind because...
The sphere inside of you, it creates a connection between you and Arishem. Maybe I can repurpose it and create a connection between all of us.
Okay. It doesn't do anything power-wise with connecting to Arishem, it just facilitates the Skype calls. So that doesn't really make sense. Right before Phastos starts, Thena says,
"Don't kill her."
Which is the worst time to say that. Distracting him right then could have very well made him kill her if that's how taking out the orb works. The fact that he can do this at all is very strange, but we'll get to Phastos' powers later. After Phastos pulls it out and has no more information than right before this, where he said he might be able to repurpose it, Cersei asks,
"Will it work?"
He's not gonna know yet. He just took it out and has no more information than he had before. So he then does tech things as usual, and makes them all wristbands for the Unimind. We then see Icarus saying he's glad Sprite is here, which is really awkward, just like every other scene between these two. So Icarus flies off and breaks the ship, which makes the ship seem really fragile. He uses no effort at all. He encounters Thena, and when they fight, Icarus grabs the blade mid-swing. How is he this resistant to damage? We've seen him get damaged before, so either this shouldn't have happened, or Thena made a really dull blade here. So they continue fighting, and Makari brings Druig and Cersei near the volcano. They activate the Unimind, which has lines that are really thick from far away, but thinner from up close, which visually doesn't make sense. Druig manages to stop the eruption, but Icarus knocks him out of it, then flies him up to the sky and lasers him into the ground, at a very high speed. Icarus then goes and cuts the ship with his lasers super easily. These lasers usually suck at damaging things and just push them, so the ship must be really weak. Icarus then comes over to say,
Druig's gone. It's over.
But why would you land? All that does is make you vulnerable, which Makari immediately takes advantage of. She takes him away so nobody can help. That's not a very good move. With Thena you could probably beat him easily. The volcano then starts bursting, so they have to stop themselves from getting hit by volcanic rocks. Cersei's method is to turn a rock into birds. Okay, wait, before we go back to questioning the limits of her power, this wouldn't work anyway. You are touching the rock to make it change, so all of the force from the rock went into your hand anyway. But she doesn't even recoil, she just stays in the same stance. And as for turning it into birds, if she can do this, shouldn't she be programmed to go around turning stuff into people to raise the Earth's population? I mean, Arishem really poorly programmed them anyway. But also, if she can turn things into living things, where do her powers end? Could she turn something large into a celestial? The birds all immediately knew how to fly, so would intelligent life she creates immediately have some level of knowledge? Also, why would she make it into birds anyway? Couldn't one fly into her face and distract her? There are a lot of better things she could have turned it into, like air. Remember how she said she could do that? This would both protect herself better, and she wouldn't have the ability to create life, because that's problematic. We come back to Makari pushing Icarus along the same wall as earlier, despite a lot of time passing in between. Then he lasers a rock to stop it from hitting him. But why doesn't he fly now? If he flew, Makari couldn't reach him while he's defending himself from the rocks. But sure enough, she attacks him again and he's just standing there. And she actually uses her power well here. Cersei then decides she's gonna go stop this, and starts running over to the volcano. We go back to Makari pummeling Icarus, then somehow he pushes off the wall and catches her. With her speed, there's no way he could do this. She should be able to dodge out of the way super easily. And for some reason this hit comes a lot slower than the barrage she was doing. This is what allows him to catch her, which still doesn't make sense, but now she just slowed down on top of that. Thena and Phastos start attacking him. Phastos does random technology stuff, and this is a good time to talk about his powers. Phastos' powers make no sense. He seems to be able to just do whatever with very little limitations. He controls technology without touching it, just makes parts of it move to construct it, and also attack with it. But we don't know where his power ends. Can he control any metal? He could control the orb that was in Cersei for no reason. I have no idea what the limits to his power are, and he just kind of does whatever when the writers need him to. Anyway, while they fight Icarus, Crow comes in from above and punches him. Phastos shoots Crow. Athena asks why he's helping Icarus even though she wants to kill Crow as she said earlier, and Phastos replies,
"We can't let it absorb our powers."
Which makes sense, until Crow says,
"Too late."
What's too late? They already know that he absorbed Ajax and Gilgamesh's powers, but that's not what Phastos was talking about. Phastos was talking about the power of the people here, which Crow has not taken yet, so it's not too late. I don't get the point of this line. Makari then runs around him to make a dirt cloud around him, instead of attacking him for some reason. He stomps to knock out Makari, tries to absorb her power, but Phastos blasts him into a cave. Athena chases after. Icarus starts flying away to find Cersei, but Phastos uses his dumb tech powers to latch onto him, then things just start coming out of the ground to also latch onto him. This is even more than we saw before. This is just insane. Could he just make turrets sprout up from the ground? He only uses 2 blasters at a time for some reason. If he can do this, why not make turrets? It somehow also makes his laser eyes not work properly, which I mean, maybe it would make sense if it made his laser eyes not work at all. But if he starts to shoot the lasers, they can't just stop. That's not how lasers work. It's like a beam of light. If it started moving, it will reach its physical endpoint, wherever that may be. It can't just peter out because it is lacking on energy. This would be like if a Star Wars blaster was too low on battery, so it fired a laser, then that laser disappeared midair. That's not how it works. If it had enough energy to start the laser is already there and it will reach its endpoint. So then we go to Athena in the cave where Crow went, where he taunts her until he attacks so they start fighting. Then we're back to Cersei. She's running across the lava field. Sprite makes a fake Ajax, who Cersei talks to instead of continuing to run to the volcano, which results in Sprite stabbing Cersei, the person who she has lived with for a while, just because she's a simp for Icarus. Wow. Sprite has her speech about how her life sucks because Erisham designed her stupidly, until Druid comes up and knocks her out with a rock. But more importantly, how is Druid still alive and mostly uninjured? He is still conscious and can walk. Remember this? How is he just fine still? The Eternals sustain injuries from far less. You can't tell me he's just fine after that. Then Cersei turns the knife into water. This is a really bad idea. The Eternals, despite being robots, still have blood for some reason, and removing the knife from yourself is just gonna make you bleed out really fast. It's not like she's fine because she's a robot. We saw how she reacted to getting stabbed in the first place. She then runs off at full speed despite this stab wound. Lovely. And we're back again to Athena and Crow fighting it out. And this fight is fine, I guess, other than some questionable moves by Athena. Athena goes into Mad Weary mode, which allows Crow to pick her up, give a dumb speech about how Eternals and Deviants are the same, until Athena's Mad Weary ends and she just kills him. I don't think she could fake Mad Weary because her eyes went white, so it just conveniently stopped in time for her to kill him, I guess? So, this was anticlimactic. They did absolutely nothing with Crow. He just existed for the trailer shots so they could trick us while making Icarus the actual villain. So the Crow storyline just ends up being lame. Also, Athena's just diced up the being Gilgamesh's consciousness was inside, then says, which is a callback to from earlier when Gilgamesh died, but that doesn't really seem fitting, because she's saying it after she essentially killed him for a second time. It's not really him, but his memories were in Crow at least, and you diced him up without a second thought. So this whole sequence of trying to end the emergence has been pretty bad so far, but here's where it goes off the deep end. So this island gets swallowed up by the sea, because the emergence is really starting at this point, which means the Earth is doomed. I'm going to do this part a little out of order, focusing on the emergence part first, then what the Eternals are doing at this moment. But spoiler alert, Cersei turns Tiamut into marble, stopping the emergence. The Earth's crust is being burst open at multiple points, and a lot of mantle rock is being displaced, which is going to be very disastrous, as Tiamut is disrupting the makeup of lower layers of Earth, which would cause massive explosions and sinkholes in other places, as well as disrupting Earth's magnetic field. He's also pushing tectonic plates out of the way. The writers at least made the emergence in the corner of 3 tectonic plates, so he's not breaking through them, just pushing them out of the way. But pushing tectonic plates this far is going to cause massive earthquakes and tsunamis, and probably other worse effects based on how far he would be pushing them away. I'm not knowledgeable enough on this topic to know for sure, but I know the effects are going to be pretty extreme. But now notice how close his hand and head are, and the angle of his head. The VFX supervisor confirmed that Tiamat is about 300 miles tall. Some people try to use the defense that Celestials are made out of energy and have no mass, but he is pushing things out of the way as he emerges, so he definitely has mass. Then he gets turned into marble, which definitely has mass, and is pretty dense. This means that Tiamat, who was originally in the core of the Earth, somehow traveled close to the surface, which would move a lot of mass outwards, and even further outwards when he partially emerges, which would slow down the Earth's rotation due to conservation of angular momentum. Thus, days would be longer at this point, and everything would suddenly weigh more, because there would be less centrifugal force counteracting Earth's gravity. The amount of his head sticking out would be numerous miles tall, which means it would tower into the atmosphere and probably reach the ozone layer, which would have some pretty disastrous effects on global weather. Something far worse than all of this comes up when we look at the visualization Ereshim showed earlier. We see in this visualization that Tiamat is very close to the surface, yet after his hand and head emerge, the entire Earth explodes. He's not in the center, so the Earth exploding isn't caused by him pushing outwards from the center, it's an entirely separate process. He starts emerging, then it just explodes. The Earth's explosion seems too soon to be happening because of the amount of mantle being displaced. Instead, it just happens. Although even if it was because of the amount of mantle being displaced, that still happened right now. Turning the Celestial into marble and killing it isn't going to stop this explosion. So that means the Earth should be destroyed after this, and spoiler alert number 2, it's still fine a while later. Even if the Earth did survive, it should be in big trouble all the ways I mentioned earlier. But it's not. Everything is just fine. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now on that note, let's take a step back and look at what the Eternals were doing while the Earth was not exploding. Cersei just so happens to be standing on where the hand is, which is very lucky. The place the other Eternals are didn't have a hand or head emerging there. She very well could have just fallen into the ocean, because there's more ocean than Celestial around. She starts converting it to marble, then we go back to Icarus, who somehow breaks out of Phastos' trap thing. I have no idea how he does this. He just kind of stands up and lasers the sky, which causes an explosion for some reason. It's a very delayed explosion that just kicks up dust and pushes Phastos away for some reason. It's very strange. Makari comes in out of nowhere to see if Phastos is okay. I have no idea what she was doing up to this point. Then Icarus flies off to find Cersei. He confronts her and gets ready to laser her, but then the power of love shines through. No, really. He has a flashback to their extremely bland relationship, then decides to give up. And they called back to this line again. Nice job, Ereshim, allowing the Eternals to find Earth beautiful when they're meant to destroy it. We finish the flashback and Icarus is now very sad.
Gonna cry?
But then everyone starts going into a Unimind-like thing, but Cersei drops down and starts converting all of Ereshim to marble. So instead of infinite cosmic energy, she now has infinite times 8 cosmic energy. Very cool. She also starts screaming, which isn't a problem, but I just thought it looked and sounded funny. Honestly, this shot is really cool. But look how big this thing is, and how far it goes above the clouds. Like I mentioned earlier, even though Earth didn't explode when it should have, this is still going to have some disastrous effects. There are seagulls nearby that for some reason didn't get as far away as possible when a volcano started erupting, and a gigantic hand and head rose from the sea. Icarus is still crying, and Cersei's wound heals, which will be explained later. Icarus's final words are,
I'm sorry,
before flying off into the sunset. But literally. He flies away at such a high speed he makes an explosion in the clouds, flies a bit more before turning back to Earth, looking at it, then firmly deciding, yeah, I'm gonna fly into the sun. This cut has to cross an insane amount of time, because the sun is 93 million miles away, so if Icarus was flying at the speed of light, it would take him 8 minutes. but he's going a lot slower than that, so it's going to take quite a lot longer. So he flew all this way, and didn't once change his mind about flying into the sun and killing himself. The writer who thought they were so clever with this got it wrong anyway, because in the story, Icarus flies too close to the sun then falls and drowns. In this, Icarus didn't drown, he just burned up. That death was a failure on all fronts. So we're back to the other Eternals, and already the sun has gone from up here to down there, so it's been hours at this point, and they've just been standing there. Makkari didn't go to get Cersei or anything. When Cersei arrives, Phastos asks her how she did it, and she said that Tiamat joined the Unimind, which is still a dumb name by the way. Phastos explains that this is how they survived the destruction of other planets. They form a Unimind with the Celestial to boost their energy so they can regenerate better. This is how Cersei's stab healed. It's still nonsense that they are increasing the infinite amount of energy to more. And if this process just happens every time, how is Cersei able to break free of it and fall out? That seems pretty counterproductive to the reason it's happening. Especially because they don't choose to enter it, it just happens forcefully. But how would this stop them from dying anyway? No matter how much you regenerate, the planet is exploding. I feel like it would incinerate them and none of them would survive. Also, if we go back and look at this Unimind, it only has lines from the Eternals who are here. This means that if the emergence finished, Kingo wasn't connected and would have died. Did the Eternals need to be together to survive the emergence? They don't have that knowledge, so it's possible one of them could just die because of their stupid system Arishem setup where they lose their memories and don't know about their true purpose. After Druig and Sprite show up, Cersei says that because of her energy from the Unimind, she can make Sprite human, so she does it. But hold up, she turned a rock into birds when she wasn't on the Unimind. Why can't she turn Sprite into a human without it? It doesn't seem like the Unimind would be necessary for this, and on top of that, she doesn't ask Phastos, who has a human family, the same thing. We then go to Ajax's house 2 weeks later, despite the Eternals all being stuck on an island in the middle of the Indian Ocean when we last saw them. In a bit, Phastos says he fixed the ship, but it's the first time his son has seen it. So I guess somehow he fixed it while they were on the island despite having no resources, then they arrive somewhere with the ship that his son couldn't see, yet somehow his son and the ship are here without his son ever having seen it before? Something here just doesn't line up. The rest of the stuff that happens here doesn't really matter. Then some of the Eternals leave to go tell other Eternals the truth. What caught my eye here was the subtitles. Engines? How does their ship even work? There's no thrusters on the back, like every single other ship we've seen in this universe, yet it can still fly. I'll give it a pass because the Eternals just kind of violate all of the rules of physics we know from this universe and our own, but it's still quite strange. Then we see Cersei and Kingo leaving Sprite. Then Dane comes to talk to Cersei. Dane asks,
"So after all that, you still can't change me into a giraffe?"
And she says, next time she's connected to a Celestial through the Unimind she could. But she could do it without being connected to a Unimind. She turned a Deviant into a tree, and a rock into birds. So why can't she turn Dane into a giraffe? I mean, I know why she shouldn't, but she is fully capable of doing it. Dane starts talking about his family history, but before he can finish, a thunderstorm quickly appears in the sky before it splits to reveal Arishem. If he was gonna split it anyway, what's the point of this thunderstorm? Did he make it on purpose? Did his presence cause thunderstorms across the world? I'm not entirely sure, but if he can split it, I'm sure he can make it just not happen in the first place. He then pulls Cersei away, and we see this absolutely insane shot. It's hard to tell from this shot how much of it is perspective, and how much is his actual size. Our best view for scale is probably the shot with him in the sky, which means he is still insanely big. Also remember how Tiamat pushed the terrain out of the way on his way out of the Earth, which means he has mass. Well, that means Arishem is here with all of his mass right next to Earth, and his gravity does absolutely nothing. He brought Kingo and Phastos up here too, and says he will spare humanity for now, but he tells them,
"Your memories will show if they are worthy to live."
I don't know what he means by that. What determines if they are worthy to live? And why not spare them if Tiamat is already dead, and there's nothing you can do about it? Are you gonna destroy the Earth, but for no reason this time? He then creates a black hole on his way out, which does absolutely nothing, because we don't care about physics anymore. When we look back at Dane, everyone is panicking, which makes sense, but car alarms are going off for some reason? don't get how his appearance would cause car alarms, but not have disastrous other effects because of the gravity he has and the black hole he makes when leaving. But finally, the movie is over. Psych! Just kidding. This is a Marvel movie. We've got to have mid and end credit scenes. And oh boy, do we have them here. I hadn't seen a credit scene this bad ever when I first watched this movie. Then Morbius came out and had 2 really bad credit scenes, but this one is still majorly problematic. Makari is saying that they haven't heard from the Earth Eternals in 3 weeks. Thena pins it on Erishim and says they have to go back before looking into an empty hallway because she feels something that Makari feels too, apparently. Then a drunk troll teleports in and introduces
the Royal Prince of Titan, brother of Thanos.
Brother of Thanos. Interesting. So Thanos was royalty on Titan?
Star Fox.
Come on! Hiya! Oh, it's a different Star Fox. It's Harry Styles. But pay attention to the first line of dialogue he has.
What a pleasure to make your acquaintance, my fellow Eternals.
Fellow? Fellow Eternals? Thanos' brother is an Eternal? An Eternal is a prince? Okay, so first of all, they're obviously not biological brothers, because the Eternals are not biological. In the comics, they are brothers, and Thanos is half Eternal, half Deviant, because in the comics, the Eternals aren't robots. Also, when Thor cuts off Thanos' head in Endgame, nobody goes, wait a second, his insides look weird and robotic. I strongly doubt they are just good friends, because if that was the case, they may refer to each other as brother, but Pip wouldn't refer to Eros as brother of Thanos. So I guess Eros is Thanos' adopted brother? Which is really weird, because first of all, being adopted into a royal family seems like it's getting involved in their conflicts that don't involve deviance. And also, Eros was adopted despite being an adult permanently. On top of this, with Thanos' relation this close to an Eternal, you'd think the Eternals and his own brother would be willing to get involved.
You are as beautiful as legends say.
So there are legends about Thena, and if she or any of the others figured out about them, it would give them knowledge that this isn't actually their first mission and their memories are wiped, which would probably make them doubt their faith in Erishim, which hasn't happened until Earth. I guess they just haven't encountered the legend for the millions of years they've been doing their job for. Eros reveals,
your friends are in big trouble. We know where to find them.
So he is another Eternal that went against his purpose. Great programming, Erishim. In our next end credit scene, we see Dane opening a case with a weird-looking sword in it, and he reaches for the blade part of it. I don't know what he's trying to accomplish here. Why is he touching the weird-looking blade part instead of grabbing the handle? Also, I wonder why the blade moves around weirdly like that. Perhaps it traps the souls of its victims or something. Well, before he manages to touch it, a voice says,
"Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?"
surprising him. The voice was confirmed to be Blade, and if you haven't caught the memo yet, Dane is a descendant of a Black Knight. But my question is, why is Blade in his house at this specific moment? Blade just happened to be in the house the one time Dane tries to touch the sword and stops him just in time? Does Blade spend all of his time hiding in Dane's house waiting for the moment he investigates the sword? That question was a joke, but seriously, I don't know how Blade knew to be here at this specific time. Now we're done with the movie for real. Here's a bonus round of stuff I missed or didn't think I explained well enough. More on the Eternals eating. There's no way they need it because they have infinite cosmic energy. So the reason they eat is because they can taste things. Why can they taste things? This is a completely useless feature, much like a lot of the other things they can do. More on the Celestials creating suns. Our universe has a natural order of how suns and galaxies are formed, and it happens that way because of gravity and all other laws of physics. The MCU has these same laws of physics, so this would happen there as well. Celestials creating suns would mess with this and have pretty disastrous effects. Or, if suns only happen because of the Celestials, that's breaking the laws of physics we know to exist in the universe. Makari can cause sonic booms on command, but doesn't when running around the world. Is she choosing to go under her top speed? Also, I don't know how I forgot this because it's what everyone points to when talking about the movie. How does this Celestial sticking out of the Earth not come up until She-Hulk? A lot of Phase 4 takes place after Eternals, as it takes place about a month after Endgame. Phastos has some pretty good offensive capabilities as we see in the third act. so why is he never helping fight deviants in the past? To add on to Earth's population being higher than before the snap somehow, Falcon and the Winter Soldier told us that half the fish got snapped as well. So that's less food for everyone, especially because this would have massive negative effects on ecosystems. But I'm not going to let you go just yet, because I haven't told you my exact thoughts of the movie based off of all these criticisms. Let's start with the world building. The world building of this movie is a disaster. As I described, everything Arishem created was insanely stupid, and on top of that, this movie just breaks the history of the MCU. The MCU turned out like our world because it was mostly the same until World War II. But the more they tamper with history, the less it makes sense that the MCU turned out the same. Shang-Chi did this, but Eternals did it in a way that's far worse. There were deviants on Earth during all of humanity's history. 10 Eternals arrived 7,000 years ago, going around making up stories and, in the movie's own words, shaping history. You can't just introduce that to the past of this universe where the Earth's history was mostly the same before, and ended up very similar. On top of that, it breaks space in the MCU as well. The Celestials being before the Singularities is a flat-out contradiction, but also doesn't work because from what we know, nothing existed before the stones because nothing could exist before the stones. Plus, Celestials make suns now for galaxies to form around. That doesn't work. There are reasons these things form the way they do in real life, and if it's a different method despite having all the same mechanics of real life with some more tacked on, it's not going to turn out the same way. So that's disastrous as well. This movie is just a heaping pile of disastrous world building. But the world building isn't the only bad aspect of this movie. Let's talk about the plot. The plot is that Cersei sees a deviant despite believing they're all extinct. So when Icarus arrives, they go to find Ajak, who's dead, which results in them getting the rest of the Eternals together. Then Cersei finds out about the emergence, so they figure out what they're going to do about it, deciding on Druig putting it to sleep using the power of the Unimind. They eventually are enacting this plan, then Icarus reveals he's the bad guy, and some people go separate ways. Druig's attempt doesn't work, so Cersei decides to turn the Celestial into marble, because earlier she broke the one rule her power had with absolutely no reason given as to how she did that. This giant marble celestial corpse has none of the effects on the Earth that it should, and the Earth doesn't explode despite the fact that the Celestial dying shouldn't have stopped this. So basically, everyone on Earth has plot armor, or the Earth itself does, or both, depending on how you want to look at it. This is the broad strokes of the movie, and the entire movie up to figuring out Icarus was the antagonist falls apart when you do learn that he's the antagonist. The movie entirely relies on Icarus's awful planning and choices, and the rest after that is stupid of its own accord. So the plot is in shambles on a high level, but even when you get down to the more specific stuff, a lot of the action is poorly thought out and powers and durability are inconsistent. So the plot is really bad as well. But how are the characters doing? Let's go through character by character, starting with our main character, Cersei. Despite being the main character, she doesn't have a lot going for her. We barely get anything from her besides, humanity good, we shouldn't end humanity, as well as poorly using her powers. She is bland, but not exactly bad, just meh. Sprite barely has anything as well. She is just annoyed that she can't age the whole movie. Then she turns her back on her family and the entire Earth because she's in love with Icarus, when the feeling isn't even mutual. Sprite is just a bad character. Speaking of Icarus, he was good, until you realize that he was trying to get the emergence to happen, in which case you realize that he is insanely stupid and his plan was awful. Then he flies into the sun. Icarus is really bad. Kingo. I actually kinda liked Kingo on my first viewing of the movie. Upon analyzing his actions though, I hate him. He is super inconsistent on his views of family and because of that is a hypocrite and a jerk. He claims that they should have all stayed together, when he is the one that chose to leave Sprite, due to a problem he solved for himself later. Then he says you don't turn your back on family, then immediately proceeds to turn his back on family. He sucks. Gilgamesh is okay. He really just has 2 stupid moments and other than that he's fine. Still doesn't have a whole lot going on, although his relationship with Thena is nice. Speaking of Thena, she's just okay as well. A good chunk of her screen time she's not exactly conscious, and when she is conscious she doesn't do much. She's fine as well. These are the two least bad Eternals. Druig is awful, both morally and consistency-wise. He does what he does because he hates that humans just choose to kill each other, when he is controlling humans against their will and allowing them to die. Then he says that he didn't control the world because humans need their flaws to be human, so why is he still in this town and willing to control people? Kingo was right about one thing.
Druig sucks.
He does suck.
I've said for all the ones that aren't awful, that they just don't have much. Same goes for Phastos and Makari, and they also use their powers poorly for the most part. Phastos is kind of inconsistent with his views on humanity as well. Oh wait, I forgot Ajax exists. She doesn't have much either, other than the fact that she found something special about this planet who took a long time to get the freaking wheel, and it caused her to doubt Erisham when she hadn't over millions of years. That's stupid. So the Eternals overall, not great. How about the human characters? Karun is just a joke and doesn't try to protect his expensive equipment when a child comes up to break it. That's the only notable dumb moment from him, the rest is fine, I guess. Dane, however, I think is the best character in the movie. I know he's not in it much, but that just means he has less stupid moments. 0, in fact. Well, one questionable one. He's not good or anything, just less bad than the rest of the characters, probably because he doesn't have any powers to use poorly. Yet. His reactions to everything he's learning about Cersei are interesting, so that's something. He's the best character solely off of the fact that he's the least bad. But moving on from the human characters, we reach our final character, Erisham. As I mentioned before, I think Erisham is the stupidest character in the MCU. But he's not even consistently stupid, no. Despite his insane stupidity when it came to design and plan for the Deviants, continuing to send them down after they went rogue, and his awful designs for the Eternals, he had enough intelligence to create machines this advanced in the first place. So he's not even consistently stupid. Great. I already talked at length about how stupid he is, so I don't need to explain anymore. So, Eternals has awful world building, an awful plot, and characters that I would probably just have said were bad, except for the fact that Erisham exists, so the characters are awful as well. This movie is a complete train wreck. I don't take theme into account when judging the writing of a movie, because it's something I don't find to matter in terms of in-universe consistency, and is more subjective than the other writing elements, but just for fun, I'll talk about it. Eternals messes up the theme as well. The themes seem to be something about sacrificing innocent lives for the greater good, and also something about faith, but it's so muddled that I can't tell. The point the protagonists try to make against the Emergence is undermined by the fact that Icarus and Kingo present way better arguments for the Emergence. It's a mess in that regard as well. I give this movie a 1 out of 10, and I don't often give 1 out of 10s. It has to be a failure on every front, but not just that. It has to be a failure to a certain degree on every front. Out of the current MCU, I would only call 4 things including this movie 1 out of 10s. This being the least bad of them. Why these 3 things are worse? Well, I'll cover at least some of them eventually. But wait, there's more. I'm gonna quickly cover some things from Assembled, The Making of Eternals, because it has some interesting contents, to say the least.
Our film is really led by Cersei, this complex and flawed female hero who really is, I think, our most human hero in the MCU that we've ever seen.
You serious?
A literal robot with very little personality is our most human hero in the MCU. Sure. She's not complex. She's an extremely flat character that spends the entire movie just asserting that killing innocents is wrong, with no nuance behind her stance at all. And flawed? Yes, because her ideology is so lopsided, but the writers portraying her as the protagonist probably wouldn't see that as a flaw, in which case she doesn't have any. When it comes to most human hero in the MCU, Cersei is near the bottom of the list, if not at the bottom of the list. Even Captain Marvel is a human at least, and probably has more substance than Cersei, but I don't care enough to actually make an effort to compare them.
Cersei is an empath.
No, she isn't. I don't have more to say, this is just factually incorrect.
Makari is the fastest woman in the universe.
Captain Marvel is a lot faster when she flies along a spaceship with a lightspeed drive. Makari is second place. One thing I can give this movie props for is a lot of it was shot on location, but that's not writing related. And that's all I have to say about The Assembled. The quote about Cersei being the most human hero in the MCU was just too good to pass up. If you like this video, why not leave a like and subscribe? You were here for hours, so I'm guessing you liked it at least a little bit. Next up, I have my sights on What If? Not because it's the worst. Loki is definitely worse. But because Loki already gets its rightful hate from everyone critical, and I've already seen other great videos criticizing it in detail. What If, like Eternals, doesn't get nearly enough hate? So I'd like to enlighten the masses about how bad it actually is. After that, who knows? I have a bunch of videos I want to make about a slew of different topics, so stick around to see what eventually ends up getting made. And as always, thanks for watching.